media about the Martini Henry and how they made these things. But what happened is the manufacturing. And right through the period with the most of the shoot the guys are here, guys will be able to find British military firearms. Well, originally all those manufacturers, British manufacturers, and it will touch on the influence British manufacturers had on the American Civil War. So a great influence on the kind of production in the late 1860s, 1870s, and early 80s in military small arms. And what I'm going to do today, one of the questions a lot of people ask me when I'm looking at rifles at IMA and places like that is they come up with markings and who's this manufacturer? And we started to find quite a few now. Chris came up with a couple the other day by the Henry Rifle Barrel Company. Not many people know much about it. National Arms and Ammunition Company, another few rifles that are kind of popping up. Are they rare? What are they? What influence has this? Is this a kind of super rare manufacturer? In many cases, during the high period of Queen Victoria's Empire, between 1860 and 1900, there's actually only 5 small arms manufacturers making for the government. Only one was a government organisation, the rest of them was private manufacturers manufacturing under license or basically manufacturing contracts for the government itself. Most of them based all their manufacturing on the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield. Enfield produced all the gauges and patterns for everybody else to follow, and they would supply these free of charge to the respective manufacturers. The Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield was opened in 1830, primarily to roll 1815, to roll gun barrels. By the mid-1830s, it was producing 100,000 gun barrels a year. The manufacturing at Enfield was made by barrel manufacturers, actually by bending metal into a tube to create a tube, weld it, and roll it in huge gritstone rollers. By the mid-1860s and the early 1870s, machine manufacturing became the kind of key word. It was a great exhibition in 1850 that actually changed things. It was an American manufacturer that had a huge effect on Enfield itself. It was a great exhibition. There was a particular stand by Robbins and Lawrence of Windsor, Vermont. And the Robbins and Lawrence factory was a showpiece in how to manufacture small arms. And it had a huge effect on the Enfield management. When they saw how they made it by pattern and production, it was exactly the same all the way down the line. It set the whole gear up. And Enfield took that on and took it to a new level. By the 1860s, the factory at Enfield was producing about 600,000 rifle muskets a year. But of course, by the end of the 1860s, with the introduction of breech-loading small arms, it really took a quantum leap. This is the Royal Small Arms Factory at Enfield. This is called the Large Room. It was opened in 1852. It was 150 yards long by 120 yards long. It was a showpiece of engineering. This was the model factory, really, the rest of the world copied. It had a huge glazed saw-shaped roof. In the roof itself, it was evident by huge amounts of iron pillars. The pillars took the rainwater off the roof into huge settlement tanks to be used in the factory. It was powered by a huge steam engine and water wheels on the lead navigation which ran past the factory. In front of the factory itself was a large canal basin where narrowboats would come in, take the loads and take it off to the maintenance store at Weed and Beck. This was a showpiece factory for its time. On the top is a huge bell called Albert, which rang out on the hour. You can imagine this in the 1860s. This would be full of smoke from the coke boilers, from the coke burners, and the sound of banging of the steam hammers inside the factory. This is the extent, it's an ordnance survey map of 1890, the extent of the Enfield factory. To the side here you've got the lead navigation, which is an unnavigable waterway, and next to it was a canal route which fed the factory. You can see here the canal coming into the factory and into the large basin. Here's machine shop number 1, the large room as it was called, so you can see the size of it. There's rolling plants, gun barrels, factories. There's a 1,000-yard rifle range because you could test the machine the rifles at the side of the factory. So this became the model of engineering of production. By the mid-1870s, this factory was turning out 3,000 Martini Henrys per week. This is typical of the inside. It looks like something inside of a spaceship. This is a photograph taken around 1890. It shows the extent of what the factory went to. Huge water wheels drove the factory, and there was huge amount of belts and pulleys which ran the machines. These are belt-fed machines, these are not electrical machines itself. This is the gun barrel boring plant. You can see gun barrels here, sitting on the machinery. These machines were introduced in 1880. These were the start of the engineering kind of revolution in gun barrel manufacturing. The Enfield factory had actually went to Terni in Italy to see some machines that had been installed by the Leeds Machine Company of Greenwood and Batley. They were not all just gun barrel manufacturers, general machine tools as it was, but this took manufacture to a whole new level. Up until 1880, it took 3 men to manufacture 15 barrels a day. With the introduction of the Greenwood and Batley machine, one man could look after 6 machines, so he could turn out somewhere in the region of 30 barrels per person per day. So you've now taken production up to a whole new level. So by the mid kind of 1880s, this factory was turning out anything up to probably somewhere around 12,000 rifle barrels a week. You see the production as it moved up. This is the rifling machine in Enfield factory. This photograph can date to sometime around 1890. The reason being is the rifling machine has got 303 rifling on the rifling machine cutter here. You see the grooves on here. This is following the profile of the rifling machine as it went in and out of the barrel, cutting the rifling grooves. For a Martini Henry barrel, of course, that would be 1 turn in 22 inches. This is the Enfield, which did 1 turn in 10 inches. And the idea is the cutter ran up and down this guide here, on the stock guide, which is going in and out of the barrel, cutting the rifling grooves as it did it. It would take with the Martini Henry 7 times to go in and out, 7 times. The barrel would rotate, it to do it again. So it actually took 49 operations to rifle 1 barrel. You can see that this machine was kind of state of the art. It wasn't fully automated, but one man could kind of handle a machine, 2 or 3 machines at a time as it went through its cycling. And most of the manufacturers up and down the country use this type of machine. It wasn't unique, it was widely copied in America, and these Enfield rifle machines was installed pretty much all over the world. When the gun barrels were actually manufactured, the Enfield was made out of, by the mid-1880s, out of a solid piece of steel. It was made out of a tube 15 inches long by 1.5 inches diameter. It was heated white hot and pushed through stretch rolls, which actually stretched it to the length of the gun barrel. So when it came out, the chances are it wasn't particularly straight, and this is the gun barrel straightening machine installed at Enfield. So in would go the rod if it was ever slightly out of alignment, and the machine would actually straighten it all. Again, these were made by, we were talking about this last night, who invented the machine that did the machine? You know, who knew how to do this to make the machine that was going to make the straightening machine? But Enfield was kind of the showpiece in manufacturing, and these machines were still being used up until the Trade War. So they were invented in 1870 and still being used 40 years later. One of the big things, the turning point at Enfield, was the Blanchard copy lathe. Obviously invented by an American, widely copied at Enfield. This is one of Enfield's Blanchards. Now you can see on this, we've got a gun, so this is a Martini Henry gun stock, obviously, on the lathe, which is following a copy profile of a steel gun stock down below. And this would rotate about 300 revolutions a minute. The frame used to put it on a rocker so it followed in and out and profiled the gun stock as it did it. The stock itself is Italian walnut, and Enfield was importing Italian walnut. It's about a ton would manufacture some about 300 rifles with the gun stock. In the mid-1880s, then, he put it out of tender and went to Webley in Birmingham for English walnut, and the price of Webley was actually cheaper. So what you find is when you look at the Mark IVs, they're much redder action, much redder walnut, and you'll see that if you compare it to an early Lee Mark I or Mark II rifle, which is kind of yellow, which is Italian walnut, look at some of the Mark IVs, they're much deeper red, which is English walnut. Obviously, it's almost black, so it gives you an idea of where to originate from. These Blanchards were still being used in the 1960s. Instead of being belt-fed, though, they were made under electricity. There's one of the original Blanchards is now displayed at the Science Museum in London. This is the proof tank at Enfield, where the gun barrels are proof tank. Here, these are actually Martini Henry 303 artillery carbine barrels ready to go for proofing. The idea is this is the proof tank. The barrels are laid on battens, and the bullets fired into a curved kind of snail shell behind it to decelerate the bullet. And the way they did it was quite unique. The barrel was loaded in a muzzle loading style. On the end it had a little plug which screwed on called the Hutz. That screwed on the end which had a firing hole in the end. So it actually loaded with a massive overpowered charge. So for example, a Martini standard 303 barrel would take about 70 grains of gunpowder. They'd put about 170 in it and see if it exploded. So what they'd do is they'd put 170 grains of gunpowder in it, then put the charge on, then a cork over the top of the charge to make sure it's gas tight. So that enormous pressure is built up on the barrel itself. So they would light it with a pull on a lanyard, which would explode all these simultaneously, and only 1% failed proof. If they came out of the proof tank and it was all in bits, then it was actually failed proof. So you can see this is quite a unique photograph of seeing the proof tanks in operation. There's another view of the proof tank here. So what would happen, the barrels would go in the end there, the lid would close on it, seal down, the man would pull the lanyard obviously from a great distance away, it would all go off, bang, 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 and then you go and see what the production is. But again, fairly unique photographs of the Enfield proof tank. But this type of production was used all over the manufacturers now. Except one thing, a lot of them haven't got the technology to turn and roll barrels. So you often find people say to me, I've got a BSA Martini Henry, it shoots far better than an Enfield Martini Henry. Oh, what's the date of it? Oh, it's 1874. Well, I've got news for you. All the barrels were made at Enfield. During the lifespan of particularly the Stein and the Martini Henry, Enfield saw the services of 7 superintendents. Some were quite famous, some quite not. Most Enfield superintendents were Royal Artillery officers, and they worked in certain departments within the Royal Laboratories. They normally served for a tenure of 5 years or until reaching the age of 60. The one that was the most influential, or one of the most, was this guy, which is William Manley Hall Dixon. Now he took over at Enfield in about 1865, so it was to see right the way through from the P53 Enfield, the Snyder, but ultimately into the Martini Henry. And of course, Frederick Martini spent a lot of time in the Enfield factory when he was adopted as the British small arm. And Dixon, who took over, was in charge of the factory in 1871, actually left and joined a competing company that was actually making Martini Henrys, who actually took the patent license for Martini's action. And we'll go on to him slightly later. But after that, it was taken over by another artillery colonel by the name G.J. Fraser. Fraser only served for 3 years, but he was there at the time when the Martini took off. He oversaw the production from 1871 to 1874, so it's the height of the movement towards the Martini. After the death of the superintendent of the Royal Laboratories who made the ammunition in 1874, Fraser took his role and was taken over by Frederick Close. Freddie Close served at the factory until 1880, and again he oversaw the highs and lows of the small arms factories during that period. By the late 1870s, production had over massive overseeded demand, and the factory Enfield was starting to wind down. There was about 1,900 employees in the factory at that time, but by the late 1870s, a lot of them were being laid off or put on short-time work. He was overtaken by Henry Arbuthnot. Now, Arbuthnot was probably the most influential superintendent at Enfield in the late 1870s, early 1880s. He saw the introduction of rifle arms. Up until that time, everything was single shot breech loaders, but of course, in 1879, Enfield took a patent arm by James Parris Lee. They looked at it, rejected it. Then came back to us about 3 years later and started developing itself, and Arbuthnot was one of the driving forces behind it. But Arbuthnot's main driving force was the Enfield Martini, which I spoke about last time, the 402, the perfect Martini Henry, which ultimately failed. Small arms had moved on during Arbuthnot's time, 450 caliber to 402, ultimately to 303. And Arbuthnot took the blame for this kind of failure. It cost the British government the equivalent of £27 million today in lost production. And of course, they had to have a scapegoat for that, and Arbuthnot got it. It wasn't due to retire, but was forced to retire in 1886. But he was taken over, his role was taken over by probably one of the most famous gun Irish family, John Rigby. Rigby gun makers of Ireland. Rigby was the first non-military appointment of a superintendent at Enfield, and he was to see the movement towards breech-loaded magazine rifles, machine guns, and the world was moving on, and Rigby was in that place. Rigby left in 1896 to be replaced by Walter Clark. He didn't last very long. It lasted 4 weeks, then he died of apoplexy. And he guessed what apoplexy is, I don't know yet, but it's obviously some kind of seizure. And eventually he was taken on by Samuel Spiller Watkin, and Watkin was to see the movement towards the Enfield rifle as we know it, and the famous rifles of its time. This is Joseph J. Speed. Speed was one of the chief inspectors at the small arms factory, and most of you know the Speed sights and the Leak Speed rifles is famous to Joseph Speed. And Hunter was the government inspector. He would oversee the kind of production of the factory and make sure everything was complete to gauge. Hunter served one of the longest service employees. He served from 1881 right the way through to 1906. Not only did Enfield make rifles, he also made bayonets. This is the bayonet plant at Enfield. You can see all the bayonet blanks ready to go in here. And they went into a piece of steel through a huge roll, which rolled it into shape for being ground into shape. Again, Enfield was turning out at any one time about 18,000 bayonets a month. This is the grindery at Enfield. Again, you can see the bayonets ready here to go. They will go on this strip roller. So you see the pouring on the blades on Enfield bayonets. This is the pouring machine, which will shape the actual bayonets itself. Again, this is the large room, you can see by the windows around the factory. This is one of my favourite photographs of all time, if only I could get in there. This is the production factory part of the large room. And here you can see every type of rifle that Enfield made in the late 1890s. On the vice here, you've got a Martini Henry artillery carbine, Martini Enfield artillery carbine. You've got a Lee Enfield here. Various of the Martini Enfield rifles, all the way along ready to be crated up and sent away to the small arms store at Weaver. If only actually you could get in there and some rifles in there. Probably some of which are in your own collections now. The government had, though, would never give it all the work to Enfield, just in case there's a problem at Enfield. So they started to allocate out contracts to other manufacturers. The biggest of the lot was the Birmingham Small Arms Metals Company, a small heath in Birmingham. Now, BSA was formed in 1863. Up until that time, they was making primarily Enfield rifle muskets, and by 1869 they took on a contract to produce Snyders for the government. When the Martini Henry was introduced in 1874, a year earlier, BSA had been allotted 33% of the manufacturing contracts. So for every 100,000 rifles were being produced, Enfield would produce 33,000 of them. There was a private manufacturer manufacturing the license for the government, which caused them a lot of grief slightly later on. BSA was originally set up at a place called Small Heath in Birmingham, and the road was particularly into a place, a service factory called Armoury Road. And so this is the Small Heath Works. This is the main factory was put up in 1862. As you can see, it's quite a building. It cost about £47,000 to build it. And at any one time, BSA had about 1,500 employees. There's another view of the factory here. This is quite a rare image that I came across from a book. This is owned by the BSA company. But what you can see here is alongside it, which made the factory perfect. This side there's a railway line, and the other side there's a canal. So services to the rest of the company is quite easy from here. This factory, the main works itself, was still being used well until the mid-1970s when it fell to the wrecking ball, much to the kind of annoyance of the local historical society. The BSA was producing, say, 33,000 rifles for every 100 produced, but they was making it as a commercial manufacturer. So for every rifle they produced, they was allowed to make 1 shilling profit. That caused them a lot of grief, because Frederick Martini, who had the patent for the Martini rifle, they didn't approach him to get the patent, so they produced rifles for the government. So Martini sued them for breach of patent. And they said, oh, you can't do that, because we're producing for the government. And the government backed them up. But Martini said, but you're to make a commercial profit. That's a commercial transaction. They lost. It cost them £60,000, which is a colossal amount of money in today's market. And the government had to pay them back. So somebody somewhere in the government was going to pay them for their own mistakes. This is inside the BSA works, sometime around 1880, and these men are bore view. So you can see what's happening now. The rifles have come off the barrels itself have come off the production line. They've been drilled out. And if you recall, to manufacture a Martini Henry barrel, they had to drill it at one end, turn the barrel around and drill it halfway through to the other. So the men, what they're now doing is looking down this drill bore to ensure that the barrel there's no cuts or bulges or anything like that in the barrel. So it's come out of the proof tank, it's been tested now, he's looking to make sure there's anything there. And you see what they're doing, these men have got the barrels looking up at the transom of the window. The idea is along the transom of the window, the shadows created by the transom of the window would create a straight line within the barrel. If there's an imperfection in the barrel, it will turn and bend the straight line. So these men are highly trained bore viewers. The problem was their eyesight failed after 4 or 5 years. Going through 4 years of training, knowing that their eyesight was going to fail after 4 years. But they're the highest paid people in the factory. They earn somewhere over about a shilling an hour, which is 5 pence in today's money, but the equivalent of around probably about £10 an hour. That's good money. So they're talking about $13 an hour. This is the extent of where the BSA factory got to. The original factory is here, at the top, but this picture was taken sometime just after the Second World War. This is all BSA's works. Here's Armoury Road, feeding the factory. The railway line runs down here, the canal runs to the side. Then the original part was there. In 1915, it had grown to such an extent that the gun barrel works had moved across to here, and this is what's called the Truscon factory. It was opened in 1915 to make Lewis guns, and the factory to produce the barrel for Lewis guns and SMLEs was just in here. You can take these pictures just after the Second World War, because in the Blitz of 1940, this part of the building was bombed out, and you can see the difference in the roof as it's just been rebuilt. This turned into the BSA motorcycle and single car factory and was demolished sometime around 1980, not that long ago. The only part that remains of the whole works now on Armoury Road is the Truscon factory, this one here. There's nothing else there, just modern industrial buildings. It gives the extent of where the small arms have gone at BSA during the period between when it was opened to when it was finished. There's still the BSA airgun factory down the road, by the way, but it's in just in a tin building.
Could you go back a second?
I would if I might do it. Okay.
And what are those, is that the workers' housing up at the top left?
Yeah, these are what terrace houses. If anybody see,
No, I mean across the railroad.
yeah, that's all part of Small Heath of Birmingham. For any reason, I don't know whether you get a programme over here. It's made it. It's become very popular in the UK called Peaky Blinders. It's based about the men who live in Small Heath. This is Small Heath, where it was based around the Birmingham factory.
Neil, was it BSA that had the contract with Snyder's for Portugal?
Yes. It's Birmingham Small Arms and Metals Company. It was actually originally called the Birmingham Arms and Ammunition Company. Then it became BSA, Birmingham Small Arms. But they bought a factory in Birmingham making ammunition, a brass case company. So they changed it to the Birmingham Small Arms and Metals Company to reflect the kind of diversification of the company. So it wasn't just guns. It was guns and ammunition, so BSA and Enfield. They got the contract for the Martini Henry in 1872, but Enfield was so slow in sending the plants and equipment to make them, they couldn't produce it until December of 1873, even though they committed to supply 18,000 by the March. What happened though, it made many parts and components. When Enfield did finally assemble, they managed to rapidly put the production together from the bits and pieces they've got, and true to form, they supplied 18,000 by March 1873. This is the BSA factory extent here. This ordnance survey map is about 1890. And here you can see the factory as I pointed out before, with the railway here and the canal here. And across the road was Trojan a new works. And this is the National Arms and Ammunition Company. They opened in 1871, and the main kind of director was a certain Wesley Richards. Now Wesley Richards set up the National Arms and Ammunition Company across the road from BSA, knowing that he could get a lot of their staff. He wanted to train staff. So they opened the factory on Montgomery Street at Sparkbrook. Now the dividing line between the two kind of towns at the time, this is Small Heath, this is Sparkbrook here, and this is the National Arms Ammunition Factory, so you can see how close it is to BSA. And the markings you'll get on a Martini Henry or a Snyder from the NAA is this NAA code, and it's This is Frederick Martini. Frederick Martini employed the National Arms and Ammunition Company to defend his patent against the British government and the manufacturers who hadn't got a licence to make it. And he joined the company as a non-executive director with Reginald Richards and those other co-directors to take on the British government. This is the Martini Henry here, from 1880, made by the National Arms and Ammunition Company. They sued the government and ultimately won, but in the period between 1873 and 1875, while they were suing the government, guess what? They didn't get a single order from the government, even though they'd been settled to produce Martini Henrys. They sued the government for, at the time, £90,000. Now, you've got to think £90,000 in today's money is around £9 million, which is about $12 million. The government fought it and lost. They allocated the money to the National Arms and Ammunition Company. The government then contested it. They went to the highest court in the land, which in England is the House of Lords, and again they voted in favour of the National Arms and Ammunition Company. But rather than pay the £90,000, they went back to NAA and said, OK, rather than paying £90,000, is there anything we can do? Yes, give us some orders from Martini Henrys. So they negotiated this out into 27% of the government contracts and £40,000, of which £4,000 went to Frederick Martini because it was his patent that had been breached. The National Arms and Ammunition Company didn't last very long though. They continued making Mark II and Mark III Martini Henrys until around 1882, when all of a sudden the contracts dried up. They only lasted an extra year and went into liquidation. Who comes along then is the British government thought, your factory's brand new, and all the machinery in there is also brand new. We're going to be making the new Enfield Martini, and so they bought the factory. It makes you wonder if there's a little bit of collusion going on, but guess what? They bought the factory for exactly how much the company owed to its liquidators. So it makes you wonder if they knew something was amiss. This is inside the National Arms and Ammunition Factory in around 1884, 85. You can see the men are bluing Martini Henry barrels. Any of you know what the gluing solution was for a Martini Henry? It was nitric acid, sulfuric acid, methylated spirits, rainwater, and tincture of steel. No, the men have got that also. But this is actually, these are Mark IV Martini Henrys, because in 1885 the government opened the factory again and called it the Small Arms Repair Factory, the Royal Small Arms Repair Factory, Sparkrock. And these men are reassembling Enfield Martinis into Mark IVs. It was nearly all done at Sparkrock. Here you can see the men now starting to reassemble the rifles. These are buttstocks of Martini Henrys here, you see, and the men are starting to put them together and reassemble. You've got the extractor levers here. This is actually a photograph that's been turned into a semi-painting for a magazine. Here's the original photograph does exist. You see the men here and all the machinery with the drive belts above it. So you can date this picture to about 1894, and they're probably assembling Martini Henry artillery carbines. Alexander Henry, the inventor of the Henry barrel. Now, in 1871, they opened a factory in London on Eagle Wharf Road called the Henry Rifle Barrel Company. And Henry was one of the chief shareholders of the Henry Rifle Barrel Company. And again, like the National Arms and Ammunition Company, who owned the patent for the Martini action, Henry Rifle Barrel Company held the patent for the Henry action, Henry Rifling. And of course, when the British government allocated the contracts to the commercial manufacturers who didn't hold the patent licence, guess what happened? They sued the government again and won. So the Henry Rifle Barrel Company, oddly enough, didn't get many contracts for quite some period of time. It was actually producing Nordenfelt machine guns for a little while, but their biggest opportunity was lost in 1888. A certain man approached them. His name will become kind of synonymous. There was the manager of the Henry Rifle Barrel Company. It was a guy called Thomas Purvis. And the man knocked on his office door and said, "Mr. Purvis, I've got an idea for you. I've invented a gun with a rapid firing action with belt fed." And he said, "That would never work. Go away and stick to electricity." It turned out Hiram Maxim. which was a good idea when you're in the gun manufacturing business. Then the Rifle Barrel Company ran up until about 1891, 92. It went into receivership and was opened up as the Henry Rifle Barrel Engineering Company and carried on making small arms for the British government until about 1900. Predominantly with the cessation of manufacture of Martini Henry's at Enfield, the Henry Rifle Barrel Company produced 450 calibre Martini Henrys, and you will see them around in IMA. In fact, one turned up yesterday, the Mark IV, which I didn't even know they made. But what they was doing is getting parts from Enfield and putting together into finished rifles. The marking you'll find on the Henry Rifle Barrel Company is HRB code. Their prefix will always be a H on the production markings. What's unusual about them is they will produce stock with no date on it. And you can see, one thing you'll find with HRB rifles is the dates will always have the last number stamped on separately. Often people think they're kind of fast copy, it's not, and you'll find most have got like 80, 90, and 2, 3, 4 stamped on separately. This is a Mark II, but you'll find Mark III, and subsequently we find Mark IV, and not the Martini Enfields. The company lasted until 1900, when it closed down. Well, it didn't actually close down, they renamed it and started up again by the name of the Blenheim Engineering Company. Rare items to find, in actual fact, BE Company. They opened in 1900 and closed in 1903. And this carbine is one of, or carbine, I'm in America, is one of theirs. Now you can see what's unusual about this, that you'll find on this. This is BE Company, Blenheim Engineering Company, 1901. The crown and cipher is Edward. So not BR, it's ER, and it's a King's crown. Now, Queen Victoria died in January 1901, so the Blenheim Engineering Company immediately changed their dies to represent the new king, King Edward's. So, and they only lasted until 1903, so this rifle can be clearly dated between January 22nd, 1901 until the cessation in September 1903. They bought another company that had made ammunition, and you will find Blenheim Engineering Company ammunition at any ammunition collectors. But it's an interesting find. This is an artillery carbine Mark III, Martini Enfield 303, made with old rifles and reassembled with 303 barrels. That's what Blenheim Engineering did the best. When they finally closed down, I've got the original liquidation papers, and their warehouse contained around 500 450 Martini Henrys, about 2,000 303 Martini Henrys. But again, not an unusual manufacturer, but rare to see with the Edward date on it. The only other manufacturer that really produced on the kind of large governmental contracts was the London Small Arms Company. LSA rifles present about 27% of the government rifles made. BSA 33, LSA 27, and Enfield 50. Then with the introduction of the National Arms Company, and obviously their contract shrank a little bit. It was founded in 1865 from the London Armoury Company that had actually been made to produce Enfield rifles for the Confederacy in the Civil War. With the cessation of the American Civil War, obviously their kind of whole contract dried up, but the factory reopened up as the London Small Arms Company. Interestingly, they shared the contracts with BSA. Today, well, the only word you can put it down is price fixing. Because every time there was a government meeting, they called in the LSA company and the BSA company to talk pricing. And guess what? Their prices were exactly the same. And if they weren't, they went out of the room and came back with the prices exactly the same again. They produced a 27% of contract. They survived well during the First World War, but they closed out in 1905. Sad really, they've gone for another 3 years and quite a lot of contracts in 1939, one would think. LSA company rifles have got the X, so if you're looking under the barrels and finding proof marks with an X trademark, that's LSA. All these guns had to be made though. Once it was made, there's a kind of preconception that they were sent out to the regiments. They didn't. They went to the huge small arms storage depot at Weed and Beck. Now Weed and Beck is in Northamptonshire in England, and that's dead centre of the country. It's in dead centre of the country because it's the furthest away from the coast that any invading army could get to the country's firearms stores. And Weedon was opened in 1835 after quite a monumental event. They had a fire at the Tower of London. And in the Tower of London, the British government stored all their small arms. And at the drop of a hat, in one fire in 1835, they lost about 90% of the backup firearms. They took steps to try and alleviate that. So they moved the storage facilities to Weedon Bay. Now nearly all of your rifles, if it's a British government small arms, whether Enfield or Snyder or Martini Henry or Lee Enfield, they all originated from this place. The factories made them and they sent them to Weedon. Originally there was a canal which fed in here, there was a portcullis that rose to let the canal barges in, and because of the fire in the Tower of London, they built 8 huge storage buildings, separated the parts. So if there's a fire in one, they wouldn't have a fire, lose the arms in another. And Weedon was a huge depot. It was opened in 1835 as a part military prison, but by 1870, these warehouses, these 8 warehouses, they measure about 170 feet long by 45 feet wide, and the floors can take up to 170 tons of ordnance. The barges would come in here and they distribute the small arms into these storerooms. In 1877, these storerooms contained 330,000 Martini Henrys. That's how big the storage facility was. At the end, they put a huge gunpowder and ammunition warehouse, and it was to prosper right the way up into the Second World War, when they introduced powered lifts and automation to the warehouse. Today, they're kind of carpentry workshops and bookstores. It's quite an interesting place to visit. But the idea worked. This warehouse here, warehouse number 2, in 1888 had a fire. The conflagration was caused by a cinder falling out of a fire grate in one of the storeroom's offices. These storerooms, they've been open for 50 years. The floors were sodden with gun oil, so they burnt furiously. Within an hour, this whole building was a flaming conflagration, and they lost 20,000 Snyders, nearly 12,000 Morris tubes, a whole supply worth of Morris tubes, and around 17,000 tents. All went up in one go. And the building is slightly different to the other buildings. You look at the roofs of these are pitched roof. This has almost got a flat roof. It literally burned to the ground. But the idea was good because they only lost the storage in one store. A railway line was put in 1877, and it's a huge facility. When you look at it almost from on the map, what you've got here is the railway line which ran along here, and the canal. The canal fed in, that portcullis gate here. There's the 8 storerooms, ammunition stores. This is about not far from a mile in length. That's how big it is. It was so important though to the British Army and the British government. There's a standing barracks, there's a standing artillery battalion, there's a standing cavalry battalion, all to serve and support it. It's surrounded by a huge 20 feet high wall here, and of course the only way in is through the gate and through the actual portcullis here, which as soon as there's a problem, they drop the portcullis and the gates closed off. The Germans had a go at it in about 8 times during the Second World War, but because of the dispersal of the building, it only sustained minor damage. It's still there today. If you ever find yourself in the UK and you're driving on the main link road between the A5 near Northampton, it's worth dropping in Weedon. It's a fascinating place to see. If you came in 1899, the base of the Royal Corps of Armourers, and this is a photograph of inside Weedon stores, about 1900. You can see here these workmen. This is the artificer of the Royal Corps of Armourers, and the workmen here. We've got Lee Enfield cavalry carbines. This guy here is holding Martini Enfield Mark II rifle. In the background is hundreds of Martini Enfield rifles. This is how the store was produced. And of course, what would happen, the regiments would call in and send their orders in, and Weedon would distribute them. So what you find, most of the rifles that come from Canada and South Africa, they've got the pointing arrows pointing towards each other. That's sale or disposal, and that will be put on Weedon. An amazing photograph. This. I've actually seen it in its absolute detail. It's an amazing picture. So there we have it. So now you should hopefully go away knowing a little bit more about the rifles that you've got and the manufacturers that made them. Of course, by the kind of the 1920s, small arms manufacturing just bombed. After the First World War, the British government produced so many rifles, they didn't know what to do. And a lot of factories, like the London Small Arms Factory, just went into liquidation. But the Enfield factory is still open today, but it's not open. You can visit it. It's now a housing estate. And the roads around it are called Martini Drive, Bren Drive, Sten Drive, Enfield Road. I think I have the address of 10 Martini Drive. David, thank you very much.
Mike, when can we get a copy of your book?
Soon. No, they just updated on the book. Everybody's been asking me. It's now with John Walsh, who's doing the production work on it. Obviously myself and Alex, we're publishing it through IMA. It's 250 pages, 165,000 words. I can't say it's 7 years work, 2 wives, 2 dogs, 3 houses. But yeah, so at the minute it's with John. We were hoping to get ready to go to print around now, but John's had a bit of problem with his eyesight, so we're looking at going to print sometime around beginning of November, late November, because it'll only take 3 weeks to print, and then we've got to get it on the boat from China, so realistically we won't see it before the new year. We wanted to get to Christmas market type of thing if we could. But yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know I've been promised it, but we've done so much work on it, and I found everything I've done in the book is primary source. A lot of these pictures appear in it. There's a lot of information that people haven't seen before, and yeah, it's been the opus. So what we'll hope to do, we're going to be doing a signing session, whether we maybe next year at the VRM thing, but anybody who wants one in the interim period can get it from me. Straight. Michael, back again.
What's next?
I knew you'd say that.
You don't have to answer, I was just actually...
I think the next one will be on the small arms manufacturers.
Okay.
Because with all the research I've done on the Martini, I've got so much background on the manufacturers that it's something, again, that's not really been covered by anybody yet, so that'll be the next one to do. And after that, I've got to rebuild the website.
Neil, will there be a future lecture, and if I can look for it, I would. Many of us have rifles that have been converted from one stage to another,
Yeah.
or repaired in significant ways. Is there a lecture in the future that will tell us were these things taken to Enfield or to Seabrook and completely taken apart and reconstructed, or were they done at the armory level? Where were repairs or reconstructions or structural changes done?
Quick answer to that, because I've just done them. Weedon. Rifles that were passed into second class would be inspected. They'd inspect them at Bagot Street, which is the original small arms repair centre in Birmingham. They were looked at and they passed them out of the first class, in which case they go back in the racks to redistribute. If they failed the first class and then became a second class, they were sent to Weedon stores trying to be broken up, the parts. Or alternatively, they were marked as second class weapons and almost sold as second class weapons. If there was going for repair, then they'd go to the Sparkwood Works. That's the Royal Small Arms Repair Factory at Sparkwood. Now it's interesting, a lot of people ask about the rifles that were supposed to be rebuilt for the Paul Cash.
Yeah.
They're not, I can tell you that they're not rebuilt in India. Because all the parts of them were put together, they'd have to go through proof and testing, and they would know that all of them would have been done at Sparkwood or Weedon. And it's interesting because in the reports in the early 1880s, they say that rifles coming into the service which are unfit for service are broken up at Weedon, and they actually said that the actual parts were worth £15,000, which in today's money is about, per annum, this is about £150,000, but with labour of only about £150. So these parts, where you get guns that have come from the Paul collection, they've got an Enfield receiver, but when you take them to bits, all the parts are BSA. And these are parts of the broken up guns, which you put back together at Spark and then sent out. The common market is Birmingham 1891, stamping on it. That's Spark.
What level of repair or reconstruction, what was the level that was offered to the regimental or the brigade or the battalion
the armourers were all originally trained out of the Baggage Street or Wheaton. So that was when they get the hammer and pincers on their arms for the regimental artificer, and they would be able to take it to a point where they could actually strip the barrel from action. And then if you get the instructions for armourers, again, it's published in my book, the instructions for armourers to what extent they will be able to work up to the barrel.
If someone had a busted stock, for example.
Right, that would either be sent as a spare part or the rifle was sent back to Birmingham to
You
spot.
could do that at the local.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was anything, any part of the rifle which could be repaired that didn't require machine intervention.
Did not require machine intervention.
Yeah, so that would be, let's say, most people know what lapping is. Obviously, lapping of a barrel to reduce cuts and rust inside the barrel. That was mainly done at Birmingham at Sparkbrook or at Baggage Street. And the way they did that, they'd pour lead into the barrel, molten lead into the barrel, and create a cast or lap of the barrel. The Enfield's method was then dip that casting into emery and oil, which then be repeatedly inserted inside and out of the barrel, which would scrub the bore of rust or cuts. And you often see on the barrel, just in front of the notch, a star. And that doesn't denote what it says in skeleton, it denotes in the Martini Henry cuts or rust in the barrel after lapping. So there's still visible cuts or rust. But again, anything that required machine intervention, like a rechambering and anything like that, would have to go back to Sparkbrook to be done.
Yes, you mentioned the stock producing lathe.
Blanchard.
Yeah, from, was there a formal correspondence between the English manufacturers and Springfield Armory in the U.S. and the Harpersbury Armory, or was it more like just looking at their patents and making a deal or whatever?
Most likely they just copied it, or got the US patent for it to produce them in the UK. Oddly enough, the main general manager of the Enfield factory was a guy called James McGee, and he served at Springfield. He moved in the late 1860s to Enfield, and then ultimately rose to become general manager. And the same as another guy called James Henry Burton, who was the manager of the Harper's Ferry Armory. He went to Enfield to join there just after the American Civil War. And oddly enough, when Dixon left to join the NAA company, he took Burton with him, so effectively he headhunted him to produce Martini Henrys. So there's lots of connections between the American gunmaking trade and the Enfield works.
All the stock-making machines for the Enfield works were made by the Ames Company in Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts.
Was it?
Yes. And some company in England returned the original Ames stock-making machine, and that's now at the American Precision Museum in Windsor, Vermont.
Is there?
Yeah.
Well, let's say there's another one in the Science Museum at London. I couldn't find the photograph of it, so I was going to try and put it on today. But let's say that's it, you can view that.
The first thing the Brits did when they got all the stock-making machines from Ames was to have an engineer make working drawings of the whole of the machine so they could
Basically copy it.
with that.
Yeah. There's lots of shenanigans. You've been in industrial espionage today.
Well, what I think is funny is the Americans just handed the Brits all this technology. Just, you want to buy it from us? Sure, let's go.
Yeah, we did that with an engine and then we go to 15. Any other questions? Glenn?
Getting back to the issue of contracts and so forth, and the Portuguese Snyders, I thought I read somewhere that there was some controversy over that contract, because initially they were selling surplus Snyders to Portugal, and BSA protested or something that they should be making a contract of new guns for them or something like that.
Well, there was actually in the end a lawsuit between the LSA company called Roden versus the LSA company, and Roden had developed an adaptation of the Snyder called Roden Snyder as it was. The Snyder's patent actually, obviously the British government copied it and used it in their to produce government Snyders. But of course the BSA company and the LSA company, being private manufacturers, had got no qualms about taking on contracts for foreign governments. Don't know a huge amount about that part of the contract, but obviously if somebody approached BSA, can you make us 1,000 Snyders? Of course we can. And that was, funny enough, with the NAA company and the Henry Rifle Barrel Company, a lot of the rifles you see that commercially made, or the kind of private manufacturing, were made by them and sold under license. The barrel itself, Henry rifle barrel, with the kind of the sorting out of the problems with the British government, they sold it to the patent to Adams and Tate, a barrel manufacturer in Birmingham. So they could produce Henry barrels. So a lot of the things like you get like Swinburne Henry carbines. I think it was today that who had the Martin, what was in Tranter, wasn't it? Yeah, today your Tranter, that's got a Henry barrel. So again, they would buy the patent from the Henry rifle barrel company, but of course the British government kind of said, oh, we don't need to pay anything, patent licence, and they're lost. Any other questions?
Last photograph we saw, I believe it was Sweden, in the background, yes. It may not be very clear, but it almost looks like a sort of a horizontal stack that reminds you of nothing so much as a similar arrangement at Springfield Armory.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of connection? Did somebody got, yes, the Longfellow, I'm talking about, or Springfield, the Oregon of muskets?
No, I think it just basically an expedient way of storing rifles. It takes less space than laying them down.
Right.
If you look at any pictures of regimental armories around the country, they've all got the rifle stored in a similar fashion. Normally the bayonet attached to the side, and that's where you get the rack numbers on rifles. So the numbers you see marked in the gun stocks are normally the position in the rack in the regimental armoury. So every soldier would have that rifle. If you was a particular, you could have a rifle with 679, and that is your rifle, and if no be tied it, if there's a problem with it, if it's dirty, it's your fault.
So when they're stacking arms and suddenly there's an arm they go grab for their guns, they got to grab their gun, not just anyone.
Not far off, yeah, or make sure you get the clean one at the end of it.